Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 12th of February 2025. Coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0NTV.
Hello.
And me, David G7RP. Lovely to see you. On tonight's show, we've got 40 metres on a glue stick with Nick M0NTV. I don't know all about it either, but we'll find out tonight. Looking forward to this. Norfolk Amateur Radio Club's coming to the Science Festival at Norwich next week. And we ask, what on earth is this? We've had quite a few entries. It'd be fair to say some are right, some are not so right. But if you think you know what that is and what it's for, you've just got time to pop it onto BATC or Facebook and we'll read it out with the rest of the questions. But I'm sorry that we start with some sad news. Jeff G4ODC passed away on Sunday. Jeff hadn't been in good health for some time, but recently suffered a fall which really set him back. Some time ago he came to a meeting at CNS and demonstrated his quadcopter. You could just see it there in that right hand picture, or drone, which was quite new technology at the time. In recent years, he didn't often come to meetings, but has been seen at Barford. However, some years ago, he was chairman of Norfolk Amateur Radio Club, and so many of our older members in particular will remember him well from those years. Sadly, I have to bring you more sad news and more bad news because Michael M3ILY passed away last Thursday. Now, I'm afraid we don't have a photo of Mike and the friends that I contacted either. It's one of those things that Mike has been poorly for some time. He was unable to attend many meetings or events in recent years because of his ill health, though he did his original M3 foundation licence with our club and came to Barford a couple of years ago as well. 2 years ago, he donated his FT1000 and FT1 to the club. And in fact, Tammy and I collected that radio from him. It was a particularly precious possession, not just from a monetary value, although it is valuable, but he realised he wasn't going to be able to use it anymore. And his clear message to both of us was he really wanted us to use that in the club, to lend it to maybe beginners, or people who just couldn't afford to have a decent rig of their own. And we have this on our loan stock, incidentally, so if you want to borrow it, probably not quite suitable maybe for the lowest or most inexperienced newbie to the hobby, but it's a lovely radio, and Mike donated that to us. I'll bring you funeral details of for both of these people as soon as I have them through the newsletter. It's Jeff G4ODC and Mike M3ILY, both silent key. Now, nearly 12 months ago now, Norfolk Amateur Radio Club had a display at the big, famous Norwich Science Festival. And it really is a big event if you've not been. There are over 200 events across the city of Norwich, and in fact some other coastal events as well happening all next week. We'll give you the website in a moment. But relevant for this is that Norfolk Amateur Radio Club, we had a display last year and we've got another one this year. This was a picture from last year's. There's the website at the bottom left hand side, but you can just Google Norwich Science Festival and you'll find details. It starts this Saturday and goes on to the following Sunday week. So it's 9 days of exhibition and we're there on Monday. And you can see there from last year, that was Jim, Martin, Mark, Tammy, who took this picture, and myself. This year it's the same team, except that Mark can't make it, and James M0UKS has kindly said he'll help us. So that looks very placid there, and I could tell you, though, that it was really busy and a very, very busy event. It's in the reception part of the forum, so if you know where the library is, you can just see above Jim's head there's a name library, but that's where it's at. It's at the forum The whole Science Festival, frankly, if you're interested in science technology, which I'm sure many of you are, it's a great event to look at. Many things are free, including this, the entrance to this. You don't need to book or anything like that. It opens from 10 o'clock. This particular display, our display, will open from 10 o'clock on Monday, but there's lots of other things through the week. So norwichsciencefestival.co.uk. Now, for some weeks now, you may have seen us promoting the 100th Bomb Group Memorial Museum at Dickleborough for the Operation Manna and Operation Chowhound, commemorating their special 100th anniversary. Well, they were humanitarian food drops to relieve the famine in Holland behind Nazi lines late in World War II. Well, I'm pleased to say that we are going to support, NARC is going to support a special event from the 100th Bomb Group Memorial Museum at Dickleborough, and it's on April the 25th to April the 27th. The organisers will be Sunny M0SYW and myself, and several of NARC members have already offered are keen to take part, including John G3XLL and Les G0DFC. But we're not just limiting this to NARC members at all. If you're an amateur and you're interested in this, then please do get in touch and we'll put you on the team details. You don't have to be there every day either. Sonny and myself will be covering the whole weekend from the Friday to the Sunday between us, but you can just come for one day or even for a few hours if you want to. But it will be an exciting event run from that museum. So please let us know as soon as possible. I know there's a little way to run, a couple of months, but these things need to be planned. We're already applying for a special event and we'll bring you more details nearer the time. Now some club members news, and Ray M0EVK has told us about this. This is, as you may know if you're interested in military equipment, this is an R107 receiver. This was actually an ex-army one, or the one that I'm going to be talking about. And there's a museum near here that have got several of these, which are excess to requirements, and they're being disposed of. So if you are interested in one of these, either for display or just for yourself, then please let me know, and I will contact Ray M0EVK and put you in touch with them, with Ray, so that you can get in touch with that. Also, Tom, G8XQD, sends us details of a radio rally that we thought you might like to think about. Now we're getting well into the new year. And this Sunday, 16th of February, there is a radio rally at Huntingdonshire, actually at Buckton Village Hall, Buckton in Cambs. Some of the details are there on the screen. You can find the details if you just do a quick Google for Huntingdon or Haas Surplus Equipment and Tabletop Sale this Sunday between 10 and 4. Thanks to Tom for telling us all about it. That's all from the club and members news. Tammy, Little People.
Little People? Yep, here you go. Here's Little People this week. I always say something before I put it on.
I didn't see it. Right, and I don't know what this is.
Do you know what happens to old mobile phones? I'm giving the game away now.
No, well, a lot
this
of them
is
get
what
scrapped.
happens to old mobile phones.
They get turned
Roulette
into gaming
wheel.
tables?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
There you go.
We must have some old mobile phones somewhere. Look at that. It's really
Cool,
cool. Miniature-calendar.com. A new picture every day, and Tammy picks one out for us. That's really good. I love the ingenuity of these things. And the more you look at it, the more little detail you see, don't you? You can see the chips there on there. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tammy. So what have you been up to? As you know, we meet here just about every 2 weeks. And we love to hear from you, hear your members' news that we can share with others. Send them to the usual address, radio@dcpmicro.com. The caption's on your screen there. Just get us to them by about 3 o'clock on the day of the broadcast. The next one will be 2 weeks' time, and then we'll be sure to read them out as well. Thank you. Now, last time we met 2 weeks ago, we set our usual competition, What on Earth? And we asked you, what on earth is this? And we've had some answers. Now, firstly, let me look and see if anybody has given us any clues on it. Anybody recognise it?
No,
nobody's added. Well, we've got several entries came in by email. Okay, and it's interesting to see when it's one of those things. If you know, you know. So make it obvious to Sam.
Okay, Steve, G4GHO. I believe this week's object may be used to align the legs of through-hole ICs. The IC would be pushed through the bearings along the centre guide.
Tom GXQD says, what on earth is a tool for aligning the pins of dual inline pin or dip ICs for insertion into PCBs or sockets, generally used for production before surface mount devices took over? IC legs from tubes were splayed at ease and fitted at attention with legs at 90 degrees. And he says there are several types available, and he used them at his BT repair centre that he worked in from 1987 to 2000.
Steve G3EVA, is the mystery object this week a guide for sliding doors?
Yeah, but I get that. You know, when you think of your sliding patio doors?
There's no, there's no scale, is there?
No, that's true. That's very true, yeah. If we'd have put a ruler next to that, that may have helped or not, because we don't know what it is yet, do we, Tammy?
No.
You're always telling me off for giving clues. Bob G6PWS says, is this something to do with either a roller shutter or garage door or guide rail? There you go.
Warwick M0WOS, I believe this to be a dip dual inline package pin alignment tool in those days of through-hole components.
Well, they're not completely gone, Warwick, are they? Anyway,
nah.
Mark G0LGJ says, I believe this is a chip former to bend legs of DIL or dual inline chips.
Mark G0TMT, I recognise this week's photo. It's an IC leg straightener thingamy-bob. Used to use one of those when I worked in the trade. I seem to remember the other side has a similar setup for devices with a wider leg format.
And Martin G3ZQU says, the device with the two rollers either side of a bar is a device for straightening IC legs prior to inserting into a PCB. The other side is the same, but with a wider central bar to accommodate wider ICs. That is what we said. And, well, what is it, Tammy?
Well, I can tell you, I don't actually have a picture of it, but I can tell you that it is a straightener, a leg straightener.
Just because we like to educate and entertain if we can, this has happened to be something that I knew what it was. And I've got a kind of version of that, which was actually homemade many, many years ago, not exactly by me, but by someone I worked with, Mac, about 40 years ago or something. And I'm going to show you one now. We've got a camera set up.
A makeshift camera.
And we haven't rehearsed this.
No.
Honestly, because this was just, if I had time, I was going to find them. So I went and around this building and found some various devices. So I'm going to firstly explain, I'm sure you've all seen an integrated circuit. Yep, this is an integrated circuit. Where can I go? Which camera?
You can
Which
on
one do you
one?
want to go? On
Yeah,
one?
go
Yep,
on
there
one.
we go. So this is an integrated circuit. We can get it in focus, and there we are. They've got legs like that. They're about 0.1 inch. But it gives you an idea. You see my fingers. That's what it looks like. Now the problem, which we're trying to solve here, is that if you plug try to put one of those ICs into a circuit board or into a socket, and I've got something here with a socket in the middle there. You can see this is where this would go. Where are we? There we are. Then it doesn't fit exactly because the legs, because they come out of the factory, they're never quite straight. I think you can see that they slightly splayed apart. And what this device does is straighten them. So we're now going to go to our close-up camera, our miniature IC cam.
You need to put that back on the desk.
Oh, you want it on the desk? But okay, sorry about that.
Where it was.
Told you we didn't rehearse it.
There. Which way round do you want it? That way?
Yeah, can do.
Okay.
And this is what it does and how it works. So this is a homemade one. Two little bearings there. This is for the larger chip sizes, all right? And this hasn't got one on the other side because this was homemade many, many moons ago with a good engineer that I worked with. And this is how you do it. So you put the IC on there with the legs that spread out. And of course, if I do this, actually I'll do it sort of from this end because you'll see it better on the camera. If I push this through, you could just see what happens there. You could just see that it straightens the legs. And if you look now, well, I should have shown you more detail, I guess, the legs before they were formed. You can see, if I use the close-up now, you should be able to see that they're really lined up now.
Look at that.
Yeah. And what's more, let's just show. And this isn't one I had prepared earlier. This is going to be live. Let me put it that way round. There we go.
Could be disastrous then.
Could be disastrous. So we literally, this was 10 minutes before we went on air. I'm going to just show you how you plug it in. Now, it won't. I should have really had another one that I had to show you which hasn't been formed. But I can now just line that up quite quickly. If I look down that way, do you see how important it is that the legs are lined up to help you? They've lined up there, and I can just put a bit of force and push it in, and it works. Now, if you didn't have that, and you didn't do anything else, guaranteed some of the legs would splay out and they wouldn't actually make as good a connection. Does that make it sense?
Yep.
You got good value there. You
did.
got that all for nothing. All right. So hopefully that helps you. That is a leg straightener tool, and thank you very much. Who sent that in? I can't remember.
That was Bruce.
Oh, Bruce sent that. Thanks very much for sending us that. We were looking for much better way. We want to mention now again, we're looking for things like that. We've got tools, gadgets, Wizmos, all that sort of thing for around that could send us or send us pictures of it, or if you want, you can give it to us at the club one week and we'll take pictures ourselves and do it. Now, someone who did that a few weeks ago, well, I'm not going to say who it is because it might give a clue.
Maybe.
So we'll just show you this, and this is the new competition, and I ask you, what on earth is this? I'm just going to say one thing. It's not a clue.
What?
Just be careful. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
What is that? And we have the real device here, and we took a picture. And I'm not going to say any more. What is that? Your answers to radio at DCP Micro in the next 13 and a bit days, just before, say, 3 o'clock or so on the Wednesday afternoon. If you know what that is, though, if you know now, drop us an email, radio@dcpmicro.com.
Yeah, but don't stop watching us.
No, don't stop watching us. But you can, open another window and then send us an email now. Okay, we're almost time for our main event to meet our guest this evening. Just to let you know what's happening in the club this week. On Sunday, we've got the GB2RS News on GB3NB at 7 o'clock. On Monday at 7:30, the Monday Night Net, also on GB3NB. It's open to anyone to join or run it. And at 8 o'clock, the CW Net on 3.543 megahertz. And then next Wednesday, February the 19th, we're meeting at the school, CNS School, between 7 and 9:30. And it's an informal, a social informal, and also Bright Sparks for our younger members, which we had to postpone, basically because Tammy and I weren't very well and we couldn't attend the last meeting. So that's this coming Wednesday, the next Wednesday, the 19th. Now, normally I do a bit of homework on what talk we're going to have, because it's our program secretary, Roger G3LDI, who sets up most of these talks online. But this one, even though it's got a very intriguing title, I have no idea really, except a few guesses about what it's going to be about. So let's not guess anymore. Let's meet our guest tonight. It's lovely to meet Nick, M0NTV. Hello, Nick.
Hello. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well. And by the way, great call sign. I wish I'd have thought of something like that for what I enjoy doing. Lovely to meet you. So thank you for joining us on Norfolk Amateur Radio Club Live.
It's a pleasure.
What are you going to talk about?
Well, essentially, I'm going to talk about home brewing a direct conversion receiver. But the difference with this one is that it's all analog and it's all discrete components.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I'm still intrigued where the glue stick comes in, but I dare say we'll find out before the end of the talk. Well, we're going to leave you to it as we always do, Nick, but just to let you know at home, as we always say, if you have any questions or comments for Nick at any time, just pop them onto BATC or Facebook Live and we will read them to Nick at the end and hopefully he'll answer them for you as well. But now over to Nick to find out more about 40 metres on a glue stick.
Thank you very much, David and Tammy. Great to be with you. Thanks very much. Yeah, just to introduce myself, I am Nick Wood, aka Nick the Vic. I'm an ordained minister in the Methodist Church, which is what the NTV and the call sign stands for, Nick the Vic. And I've only really been in the hobby for about 7 or 8 years, but I quickly discovered, and people say amateur radio, it's a hobby of 1,000 hobbies, isn't it? There's so many different angles you can go down and different avenues to explore. And so I quickly discovered that the thing that I loved was the electronics and was building radios. And I find that my thirst really is to try and understand how radios work. And I find I get a much deeper and better understanding by trying to build them and fail and learn from my mistakes. And that's kind of how it goes on. So now my thing really is building single sideband transceivers, but I'm not going anywhere near that stuff tonight. So I'm going to do what's a relatively kind of basic receiver. But more of that in just a moment. So it's possible to argue that really all analog radios are essentially just different combinations of 4 basic building blocks. And those 4 building blocks are filters, mixers, oscillators, and amplifiers. And pretty much any analog radio you can is essentially just different combinations of these things. Now, all right, these are wide generic terms. You know, there's lots of different types of filters, there's different mixers, there's certainly different types of oscillators and amplifiers. But, you know, humour me, right? That essentially, when you boil it down, that's what it comes to. And there is a radio design that you can build that is just about as basic as you can get. I'm not talking about a crystal set here, but to demodulate single sideband, and that is a direct conversion receiver, because a direct conversion receiver is basically just one of each of those 4 modules. So we start off, of course, with our antenna, which feeds through into a bandpass filter, and the radio that we're going to be building is for 40 meters, so it's 40 meters bandpass filter. And then the signal, after it's been filtered, will go through into a mixer. Only this is a mixer that is mixing down to baseband, to audio, so it's a product detector. And mixers are 3-port devices. They have 2 inputs and 1 output. So one of the inputs, of course, is our RF signal on 40 meters. The other input is coming from our local oscillator, and they will combine and give us, well, a number of things that we'll look at in a moment. But the one we're interested in is an audio signal, which we will then squirt into, technical term there, our audio amplifier, and then out into our loudspeaker. And that is a direct conversion receiver. Now, obviously, I can't see you. You can perhaps see me and see my slides anyway. But I'd be interested to know, and I don't know, but I'm going to ask this as a rhetorical question. I'm not going to ask how many people have built a direct conversion receiver. I'm going to ask a far more basic question than that. I wonder how many of you have listened to single sideband on a direct conversion receiver. Now, you will, even if you never have done, because you're going to hear some later on in this talk. But I asked the question because, you know, nobody goes out and buys a direct conversion receiver. Pretty much the only people that have ever heard single sideband on a direct conversion receiver are the people that have built them themselves. And if you're used to listening to sideband on a modern rig, and particularly, you know, some of these new SDRs with their brick wall digital filters, you know, you're going to have the shock of your life when you listen on a direct conversion receiver, because you will see there's no filter. I mean, other than the bandpass filter that lets the, you know, everything on the 40 meter band, there's no filtering other than what's between your ears, right? So clearly that's going to sound weird. And if you've ever listened on a DCR on a busy weekend, you know, perhaps there's a contest on, you know, it sounds like a right old mess, and all kinds of stuff is going across, and you think, how on earth are you going to listen to any of this? And that's part of the nature of what it is. And we're gonna have a little look at this now. How does it work? And now, hand on heart, this is the only dedicated RF theory slide in this presentation. Now, I love this stuff. You know, this is the reason that I build radios, because I just love to understand what's going on. If this doesn't float your boat, then just, you know, zone out for the next couple of minutes. But if you're interested in how it works, then this is how it works. So let's say we've got our mixer, our product detector, and let's say we've got an RF signal coming in, and just to make the maths a bit more simple, let's say we've got a 3 kilohertz wide signal. And I know it's not going to be 3 kilohertz, but let's assume it's 3 kilohertz. And let's say we've got a lower sideband signal then lying between 7097 and 7100 kilohertz. And we're also going to put into our product detector our local oscillator, which is going to be set to 7100 kilohertz. Now what happens is those two signals will mix together and we will get, well, we'll get all kinds of stuff actually, but the main two products that we're interested in are what's known as the sum and the difference frequencies. So the sum is the RF plus the LO, okay? So now if you do that, you end up with our signal now lying somewhere in the middle of the 20 meter band, right? But that's not going to bother us because we're going to filter out all the RF. We're only interested in the audio, so that won't be a problem. What we're interested in is the difference. Now this is where it's the RF minus the LO. Now I have a bit of a a thing with Bill Maher from Solder Smoke about this really, because there's a thing about what do you take from what? You know, do you take the LO from the RF or the RF from the... Well, mixers are clever, but they're not that clever. They don't know what they're taking from what. So my advice is that you always start with the RF when you're doing this. Always start with the RF because that will give you a really important piece of information. So if we do that then, so we've got 7100 minus 7100 is 0, DC, yeah, of course. But hang on a minute, 7097 minus 7100 is minus 3 kilohertz. Just a minute, you say, how on earth can you have minus 3 kilohertz? Well, you can't. Well, you can, mathematically, but in reality, there's no such thing as minus 3 kilohertz. This is what actually happens. They say a picture paints 1,000 words. So let's imagine we've got our lower sideband signal sat there between 7097 and 7100. Now, what I need to understand, you can see my ridiculously oversized cursor here, hopefully. Now, this green triangle, what I need you to imagine, this is not amplitude. This is not strength of signal. What I want you to imagine is the height of this green triangle here. The highest bit corresponds to the highest frequency of the modulated audio signal, right? So it's a way of representing how the audio is lying, if you like, within our RF signal. So the highest audio frequencies are here, the lowest ones are here. So that immediately tells you something about lower sideband. It's inverted, right? It's backwards, because the higher you tune up on the 40 meter band, the lower the frequency, the audio frequency is. And you know this, of course, when you're tuning, because you get that characteristic sound. Okay, well, that's how it lies there. So let's say we're going to mix it down. Well, what happens, I mean, mathematically, what happens is this. But of course, that doesn't happen in reality. It can't. There's no such thing as minus 3 kilohertz. So what happens is this. Wait for this. It goes, whoa. And it folds around the DC point, we say. But look at this. You say, happy days. Right now, we've got what was our inverted lower sideband signal now lying with the audio the right way around at audio frequencies. Happy days. What could be wrong with the world? Well, just a moment. Because sadly, those frequencies are not the only frequencies that will mix down to 0 to 3 kilohertz. And so if we had, for instance, an upper sideband signal, 3 kilohertz above it, because it's upper sideband, there's no spectral inversion. That's what I'm describing. There's no spectral inversion with upper sideband. So that would mix down right on top of it. But you say, you know, who's going to be working upper sideband on 40 meters? Well, probably no one. But if it is a busy band, if it's a Saturday afternoon and there's a contest on, you probably will find another lower sideband signal, 3 kilohertz or a lot less, above your signal. And because it's sat in what would be the upper sideband slot, it mixes down as though it's upper sideband, and it mixes down as it is on top of the signal that you're listening to. So when you listen on a direct conversion receiver, what you're actually hearing is the signal you want to hear plus an inverted form of whatever's lying 3 kilohertz above you. So it'll sound like some idiot is working upper sideband all the way over your signal, right, that you're trying to hear, which is why it can sound such a mess. Why would we build it then? Well, we build it, one, because it's simple, but two, because if it isn't too busy, and if the signals are spaced out a bit, it does sound incredible. Because there's so little hardware in between you and the actual RF, there's something very satisfying about, and they can sound lovely, you know. But that's it. Now, there's nothing you can do about this. Blame physics. The only thing you can do is to change the architecture from a direct conversion receiver into something like a phasing receiver, where you have your I and Q signals and you cancel out the sideband you don't want, or perhaps more commonly to a super het. And with a super het, all you do is you insert an extra stage. So instead of mixing it straight down to audio, you mix it down to what we call an intermediate frequency. Then we stick that signal through a very narrow crystal filter. And that filter's only wide enough to let through the signal we want. And so when it comes to this stage, when it comes to mixing it down, we ain't going to worry what's 3 kilohertz above, because there's nothing 3 kilohertz above, because we've filtered it all out, right? And that's why a super het sounds so much better in that respect, because of this filtering action. Anyway, that's what it is. You'll hear what it sounds like later. Let's crack on with it and get to work. So at the beginning of last year, I challenged myself, or not last year, probably year before now actually, to build another direct conversion receiver. But I set myself 2 important challenges, because I built quite a lot of them. But this one was only going to use analog modules, and it's only going to use discrete components. Now, I should say, when I'm talking about building here, I'm a scratch builder. So I build in a modular fashion. I break big projects down into tiny bits, and I will build in a multitude of different styles, and you'll see some of these styles, very commonly Manhattan style, where you do a kind of macro version of surface mount with through-hole components on top of a copper-clad board. And you'll see some evidence of this in a moment. So this was a tough one, because it meant no beloved Arduinos. Right, so no SI5351s, phase lock loop signal generator modules, right? It's all going to have to be analog. And even harder, no ICs, right? With the legs flayed out or otherwise, right? None of them, right? It was all going to have to be transistors. So that was the challenge that I set myself. So we're going to look at these 4 stages that I built. So the bandpass filter. Incidentally, just to say, if you're not aware, I do have a YouTube channel called M0NTV Homebrewing. If you just put my call sign into YouTube, you will find it. And all the things I'm going to show you today, there are videos and schematics you can download, and I've got a wealth of this stuff. So if you're interested in building any of these things, either the whole thing or just bits of it, then go and check out my YouTube channel, and there's lots more information there. This was a bandpass filter that I built to the specifications of Hans Summers of QRP Labs. And poor old Hans, he's not really got his money's worth out of me, because I when I first started, I bought one of his filter kits. And his instructions that you can freely download from his website are so brilliant and so thorough that I bought his kit, I built it, it was brilliant. And after that, I've just homebrewed on my own to his instructions. Because once you've got the idea what's going on, it's not too tricky. So essentially, it's 2 tuned circuits, here and here. And unlike low-pass filters, which are a lot simpler, bandpass filters are finicky. I've got a video called The Dark Art of the Bandpass Filter, which it seems like it sometimes. And so essentially what you're doing is you're tuning both of these circuits so that when you see it in a spectral display, you get kind of the two peaks, the two humps come together, and then you get a proper kind of pass band going through, and they're linked by this coupling capacitor here. What it's enormously helpful to have is to have some variability in the capacitance. You can vary the inductance by either squeezing the turns together or spreading them out a bit. These are actually transformers. The secondary is just a couple of turns just to kind of improve the impedance match to 50 ohms to the outside world. So there's some variability there in the coupling, and there's some variability in the actual tuned circuits as well. Okay, so that's I'm going to move fairly swiftly on and get to the juicy stuff. So that's the bandpass filter, and again, if you're interested in any of that, go and check out some of the videos. Now, the product detector, the mixer, I tried a few different ones actually, and Pete Giuliano of Solder Smoke fame, N6QW, a few years ago, he designed a product detector, an active product detector, which was, well, kind of simulating a dual gate MOSFET. I mean, dual gate MOSFETs that used to be quite readily available are almost completely unobtainium now. I think there are a few actually in surface mount form, but you'll be lucky to see one in kind of through hole form these days. So Pete designed one which used two JFETs, two J310s, wired together as though they were a dual gate MOSFET. And you can see he's got a bit of impedance matching here on a little toroid and FT3743. And he's got a bit of this is an audio filter here to stop any of the RF coming out. And yeah, this was it. So I built this, and it worked really well. The only problem I found with this is that actually, and it might not have been a problem if I was building it for another band, but as we know in the UK, the top end of the 40-metre band backs on to some pretty heavy-duty European shortwave broadcast signals. And I was just getting loads of AM breakthrough from Radio China International. And I can tell you, I'm not sure exactly where Radio China International is, its frequency, but I was hearing it all over. But even in the CW part, I was hearing it all over, because it was just so strong. And unfortunately, this mixer is just not good. And actually, I did some research, and even when you could buy dual gate MOSFETs and people used to build mixers with them, people were moaning about AM breakthrough. So I think it's probably just a problem inherent in this design. So you could probably get away with it on some other bands and it would be fine. And it's great because it gives you a bit of gain, of course. But on 40 metres, it was proving difficult. So I thought, no, I need to try again. So I went back to my tried and trusted double balanced diode ring mixers. Now, don't worry about all this stuff down here at the minute. We'll get to some of that, and some of this stuff doesn't even apply. It's because it was something I put into a transceiver. That's why you've got RX and TX relays there. So I'm not going to go into all how this works again. There's plenty of videos about that, but essentially it is a simple design. It's two, well, they're balance really on either end, and these four diodes in a ring, which essentially just chops up the signal and has this kind of mixing action. This extra bit here is a filter. This is actually an audio diplexer, which was designed by Roy Llewellyn, W7EL, of antenna modelling fame. And we'll get to that. But that's an extra bit. But let me just show you one. So this is the one. So this has got the audio diplexer on it. So I'm going to go back one. So yes. So this bit here. So that's this bit. Everything up to here. This bit here, this bit, this bit, and the 51 ohms. And essentially what it does is make sure that the the IF port, or in my case the AF port, because it's an audio frequency coming from the product detector, sees a 50 ohm impedance, and these mixers are very fussy about that, and particularly on that port. So I built it, and this is it. Now, I did some tests to see how some of these mixers fared. So now the first one you're going to see is a homebrew double balance mixer. Now this is without the Roy Llewellyn audio diplexer. This is just the basic 2 ballons and the 4 diodes, basically, fed by my signal generator. And so you will see here, you'll see that we've got some of the difference here. So we've got the 2 sidebands. Now what I'm doing to test them, of course, I'm using them as a modulator, basically. So I'm creating a modulated signal. But what I'm interested in is getting this carrier suppressed, because I know if I can use it as a modulator and get the carrier, it's going to work very well as a demodulator, because if I can get that carrier down, more's all to the good. And you'll see, I've got some figures up here. I mean, what do we got? 10, 20, 30 odd dB of carrier suppression. Not bad, but, you know, I would like to be better. And, you know, I know what some people will think. They'll say, well, you know, it's because you built it yourself. You know, if you bought a commercial proper mixer like an SBL1 or something, you know, that would be a lot better. You mean like this? Right, that's the professional one. Right, so here's my homebrew one. Go look at this. That's the professional one. Worse carrier suppression with the commercial one than the one I built myself. So it's not that. And then I put on that Roy Llewellyn audio diplexer. So it's 4 extra components on it. And get a load of this. Can you believe that? I mean, carrier? What carrier? I mean, absolutely incredible. And that shows you the difference it makes when that IF/AF port gets good 50 ohm termination. Wow, absolutely. I mean, it literally doesn't get any better than that. So I thought, this one's a keeper, right? So this was certainly going to go into my direct conversion receiver. So let's move on to the audio amp. And I tried a few different ones of these as well. This was a design that was in Sprat, the Journal of the GQRP Club, of which I'm very pleased to be a member of. And it's a brilliant resource for all kinds of ideas for home brewing, not just radios, but stuff for the shack and everything. Really, really brilliant. So essentially all this is, there's a kind of a little preamp section, and then there's a push-pull configuration here, but it's all 2N3904s and 2N3906 NPN and PNP transistors. So and it works great. It's not particularly punchy, because obviously these are not power transistors or anything like that, but it worked very well. And then Pete Giuliano got in touch with me and said, have you tried swapping out this last pair for some dedicated audio power transistors, like a tip 31C and a tip 32C? And he says, you don't change the biasing, just swap them out and see what difference it makes. And so that was the first one that I built. Ignore the transformer, that's not in circuit. So as I said, it worked really well. But then Pete showed me this one, and this was his version of it that has these power transistors in, and I built that, and yeah, it was much more powerful, and yeah, functions really well. And so that was the one that I built, and you can see the 2 power transistors here. And yeah, that was great. So I kind of worked with that. Now, the last section is the oscillator, and I've left this to last because this is really the thing that started this whole project off. and made me want to go and build another direct conversion receiver. What happened was Asher Farhan, VU2ESE, of the BATC, micro BATC fame, tremendous home brewer and radio builder, posted on his website 2 very different designs. One was a design for his new S-BATC, which is the kind of SDR version of the BATC and micro BATC. And the other was this one. Now this is only part of the design. It's a much bigger design. But he called this his Daylight Again transceiver. And this was all analog, right? All analog. And pretty much all discrete components. Now, I say I challenge myself to use all discrete components. I blame Farhan for this, really, because this voltage regulator crept in, which I kind of I built his circuit. I thought, oh yeah, I've got a voltage. So technically, you know, that's an IC. But apart from one voltage, what's a voltage regulator between friends? So this is it. Now, what this is his oscillator that he built is a PTO, a permeability tuned oscillator. Now what this is if you think of a typical analog oscillator, you might think of a Colpitts or a Hartley or a Clap or one of these. But they all rely basically on a fixed inductance and a variable capacitance, and you tune it by tuning a variable capacitor. That's how they work. The permeability tuned oscillator is different because it flips it round the other way. So a PTO has a fixed capacitance and a variable inductance. Now, they're not new. They've been around for donkey's years. In fact, a lot of old kind of AM car stereos used to have them, where you used to, you know, push the buttons in, if you can remember. You know, that they were PTO. And essentially what it is so he's got these J310s, you've got this oscillator, but the tuned circuit is this inductor, a variable inductor. Now what Farhan did is he 3D printed this former, and he put his wire, his coil on top of this plastic former, and he had I think it was a brass screw that he screwed in and out of this plastic tube with a wire on, and that varied the inductance. Now, as somebody pointed out, technically it's not a permeability tuned oscillator because it's not actually affecting the permeability, because brass has the same permeability as air, right? So it's not changing the permeability, but it is changing the inductance. But the real game changer came when I had some correspondence with Bill Mara of Solder Smoke fame, when he posted something about something he'd forgotten that someone had spoken to him ages ago about some bloke who'd built one of these PTOs, but on a glue stick. And one guy, he tried loads of it. He'd put them on lipstick things and on a glue stick. And it's the thing that glue. Could you imagine a glue stick that you kind of turn the end of it, and it rotates this shaft that goes up and down and pushes the glue up and down. And he built one on it, and I thought, this sounds absolutely brilliant. So I went to Amazon and bought a box. So this is what I'm talking about. These things. And so what I did is I put my coil, and you can see I've got a tap on that coil there, as Farhan recommends, on there. And then on the inside of it, and that the little kind of this grey bit is this kind of little collar that goes up, and you can just see the top of the shaft that comes up and pushes this collar up and down. And I super glued in 2 of these yellow Type 6 toroids, which I had to kind of shave a bit of the plastic off around to give them a snug fit. And the great thing about this is, unlike Farhan's actually, which when you tune the screw would come physically out towards you and physically in. Of course, this just turns like any tuning knob. All the action, all the physical movement is happening within the body of the glue stick itself, right? And so I did a few experiments and managed to get it at. This was the first one I did, measuring this at 7.31 microhenries. I actually needed a lot less than that, so I kind of reconfigured that. And so this was my glue stick. Now this little diagram here is what I sometimes do when I'm building Manhattan style, when I'm gluing things, pads down and soldering on top of them, which follows the schematic but kind of represents things as they look a bit more like the legs of transistors and things. So I did this, and actually at the end I only needed 3.46 to 3.80 microhenries, which would tune with a fixed capacitance of 135 picofarads between 6.97 and 7.26 megahertz. So happy days, you know, the whole of the 40 meter band and a little bit more. And so, and you can see what I did gluing these things on. Right, is there anything more to say about that? So this is it. This is what it looks like. I put it in a metal tin for a bit of shielding, and the actual, obviously the electronics are here. And I managed to kind of, a bit of a Heath Robinson thing really, but kind of support this thing in so that this is not shorting out on anything here. And it got famous because Jenny List discovered it. I looked on my YouTube channel. I thought, the views on this video are through the roof, and it's just exponential growth. What on earth is going on? And I hadn't realised that Jenny List had picked it up and had done an article on Hackaday on it, and so I had loads of people coming to check it out, which was really good. So I put this in, and I thought, wow, what an amazing thing to be able to kind of do this. Now, obviously, glue sticks are not really built with RF stability in mind. So, and you get a little backlash and, you know, a little, so some of you could do with them being a little bit kind of stiffer. I experimented with kind of putting rubber collars around here to try and slow it down. And the tuning can be a little bit tricky, but not impossible. But what was amazing about this is the stability. Far greater stability than I've ever had building a capacitance tuned oscillator of whatever variety. So absolutely amazing. You'll see some evidence of this in just a moment. Right, okay. I think we've got some on-air testing now. So turn up your volume, and there's a bit at the end that you're not going to believe, but I had to put this in because this made me smile.
George X-ray calling. Mexico 0, Radio Bravo Italy. M0RBI, G4BGX calling. M0RBI, Mexico 0, Radio Bravo Italy. M0RBI. M0RBI, George 4 Bravo, George X-ray calling. Yeah, there's a Mike 3 station, you're right down in the noise. Just managed to get the M3 bit, give me a longer call. Yeah, Mike 3 Fox, Whiskey Uniform, you're not too strong, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. But very good morning to you. You're about a 4x4, 4x5 perhaps, but right down into the noise. So back to you, M3SWU, I think it is, or Fox November uniform. Perhaps you could confirm. G4BGX, over.
Okay, so this was a bit of an experiment, but I just had to try it really. So I've got almost the same setup as you saw before. So got the PTO connected, drawing about 30 milliamps as usual, except that I've disconnected the speaker here, and you'll see I've got another audio cable connected into that audio output, and that, if I just follow it, ignoring all the graveyard of other projects going on here, going over here, and it comes into finally into this, and this is a little Behringer external audio interface, and that it connects via USB to my Mac, and get a load of this. Yeah, I'm decoding FT8 on a glue stick PTO. Unbelievable. And I'm going to do a screen capture now, so you'll see this in more detail, but I just had to try it, but absolutely amazing. So you can see on my Mac I'm running WSJTX, and I've also got a browser running down the bottom left, and I'm on the PSK Reporter website, and you can see I've got it set up to show all the messages I'm decoding. That's the best one, I think. Asiatic Russia, yeah, so that's a good old way away, but yeah, plenty of stations across Europe. And you'll see, I mean, look at that waterfall. I mean, of course there's some drift, and that's evidenced if you look at the right-hand column. You can see that same G0 signal. I'm decoding it, but there's a little bit of drift. I've got it at 1790, then I've got it at 1788, and in a minute you'll see it's 1787. But that's only 3 hertz. I mean, that's quite incredible, really. And, you know, would you use it to decode FT8? No, of course you wouldn't if you wanted to do FT8. There's far simpler ways to do it. Even if you wanted to take an analog route, you know, you'd use a crystal oscillator or something. But I just do it just to make the point about, you know, how stable this thing actually is, that it will even decode it. Now, I'd let the PTO run for a little while so it was warmed up and it settled down. And it does settle down remarkably well. But you can see from the PSK Reporter map down the bottom there that, you know, I am decoding FT8, and it's really quite remarkable that you can get that level of frequency stability with a variable inductor built on a glue stick. So, and it just kind of makes you realise that, you know, if you can do this, then really SSB shouldn't be too much trouble. But yeah, there it is. Who would have ever thought? You know, glue sticks, is there nothing they can't do? So, folks, thank you very much for listening. I hope you found something of interest there. And if you are interested in following up any more of my home brewing adventures, then please check me out on YouTube. Just search for M0NTV. So thanks very much, and I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Wow, that's really good, Nick. I mean, that's not what I expected, and I didn't know that, and I really didn't cheat and look ahead and try and find out what it was. So variable inductance is the sort of, would you say that would sum it up? How good a variable inductor would be to make a stable direct conversion? Would that fairly summarise it?
Well, yes. I mean, they were commonplace, as I said, you know, in radios of certain time, but they kind of fell out of fashion, really, mainly because people thought, well, it's kind of hard to make a variable inductor, and yeah, you can go and print your 3D print the plastic former and do Farhan's thing. And I think actually in the Solder Smoke challenge that they're doing at the minute, trying to get people to build one particular design of direct conversion receiver, they're advocating that you get this 3D printed former. But you know, you can do it on a glue stick. I mean, that's the point.
Absolutely, clearly. I mean, remarkable. And already, I don't want to embarrass you, but I'll skip to one of the latest comments, which was one of the best talks we've hosted for a long time, and it really is up there, honestly, Nick, because it's different and it's interesting, and it was already intriguing what it was going to be. But anyway, let me get to some of the questions from our listeners, our viewers. Right. I should mention from our Scottish agent, Ralph 2M0RHT, he says, Scottish boxer should be a good talk. He's a Scotsman who lived down here, and he's gone back up there, and he spreads the word.
They're very good tins, those.
Oh, don't encourage him, please. All right. So the first comment comes from Tony AG0MQG. He says, I built a 40-meter receiver many years ago, but found it was difficult to use as I could also hear broadcast band signals, especially in the evening. So you were mentioning about China, Radio China. So does this help sort some of those problems out with this type of receiver?
Yeah, and as I said, the thing that I found helped more than anything else was getting this good 50 ohm termination on the IF port of the double balance mixer. Whether you could do Pete's active mixer is a different design, and as I said, you might, depending where you live in the world as well, it's just where we are, 40 meters is very susceptible to kind of AM breakthrough, but it's gone with that little audio diplexer. It just seems to kind of do the trick. So but whether that is just with that passive double balance mixer or not, I haven't tried it on another mixer design, so I couldn't say. But yeah, that certainly works with that.
Yeah, good, really good. Thank you. Steve G4GHO now says, I built a direct conversion 2-meter transceiver many years ago using a mini circuits MD108 DBM with a crystal oscillator and multiplier chain. I don't know if you've done anything like that.
So a transceiver.
Yeah, well, that's, let me just read it again. Yes, a transceiver, yeah.
So that would be, so presumably then, because effectively what it is, it's double sideband suppressed carrier then. So, but it which you very rarely do you hear anybody actually transmitting double. So that's where basically you're suppressing the carrier, but you're not filtering out the other sideband. So you're sending out both sidebands. So you're occupying twice the space, and people could hear you on upper sideband or lower sideband.
Yeah. So
but because there's not that filtering there, you see. But yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Steve actually comes back and says he would be curious about the relative turns ratio and hence impedance transform of the tuner auto transformer as the ferrite is displaced more into one with respect to the other. Do you want me to read that again? Because it was quite a long. This is from Steve who commented that. Let me just read it again. It just moved then. I would be curious about the relative turns ratio and hence impedance transform of the tuner auto transformer as the ferrite is displaced more into one with respect to the other.
With the tuner auto,
probably on the glue,
because that's not a that's.
Well, I presume he's meaning that the auto transform would be the glue stick, wouldn't it? The inductor on there.
Oh,
and he's asking that for the tuner rate, the turns ratio. Is there more detail maybe on your website or your YouTube
well,
channel?
yeah. I basically followed Asher Farhan's design, which is basically tapping it, I think, a quarter of the way through. Now, depending on what band you're building it for, he was building it for a different frequency to me, so I was kind of on my own, really. You will need, more or less turns on it. But it's cut and try, really. So and because the capacitance is fixed, I mean, that's relatively easy to just increase or decrease the capacitance. But yeah, you've got to and also you've got to think of those ferrites, or well, not ferrites, but the toroids moving through it as well. So you need enough space for them to move in and out of to get some variability as well. So in terms of how tightly you put them together and stuff. But yeah, it's you've got to just give it a go, really. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, no, good experiment. It's a really ideal open construction sort of thing that you can play with, isn't it? And Tony G0MQG has come back and said the BF981 dual gate MOSFETs are listed on eBay and possibly other sites as well. So he reckons they are available if you don't want to do that trick with the two set JFETs, I think, that you showed at the beginning.
Yes, and I mean, they're all getting hard to get. I mean, even J310s are not as easy to get hold of now as they were. I have done some experimenting with, and I can't remember what it even is now, but there is is it an MAR6 or something, which is it's a tiny surface mount RF transistor with a huge bandwidth, so something like up to 2 gigs or something is the FT of this. So it's absolutely brilliant. So whether you're building HF or VHF or even UHF, it's really good. But you can only get them in surface mount. So I did actually buy a couple of these things and try not to sneeze.
Yes.
And managed to kind of solder a little wire on that I could connect into the kind of macro world. But there are some people. There's a wonderful guy called Todd Carney, whose call sign I forget now, but who has a website called Mostly DIY RF. MostlyDIYRF.com. He's based in the States, but he produces boards, and I think he's actually. He was threatening to produce one of these boards. I got fed up waiting for him to do it, so I built my own. But he's got them now. And actually, these are like breakout ones, so you can buy them from him. But he's actually soldered the bit on, so it's a bit easier for you to mess around with. But they're really, amazing. And they've got this 50 ohms impedance as well, so you haven't even got to worry about the input and output impedance of them. So they're really quite cool.
Yeah, so I guess they're the tiny little SOT23 sort of three-legged devices. And yeah, I'm sure there are people at the club with... our club I'm talking about with good eyesight who can solder fine wires on things like that. Just looking to the lady to my left. It's got, and that's not, I know that surface mount ICs can be a bit frightening, and I understand that, but three-legged little tiny transistors, they're not so bad, about the size of a match head, aren't they? And I'm sure we could find a way around that. But those breakout
I think
panels
something like that, something like that I don't mind having a go at. But no, I wouldn't want to solder like 64
No.
tiny pins.
No. No, agreed. I'm fascinated because you said at the beginning of your talk that you've only been being a radio analyst for about, I think you said 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. Did you know anything about electronics before that?
A little bit, not a lot, in truth. I mean, I've always been fascinated with radio and electronics my whole life, but it's something I've kind of picked up and put down over the years. So I started when I was very young, when my granddad, who wasn't a ham, but he was a radio operator in the RAF during the Second World War, and used to build a lot of his own stuff. And I've still got some of his Heathkit stuff that he built, and I just remember going through in his workshop as a little lad, and it was just floor to ceiling, just test gear and valves and all. I was like, wow, amazing. And so that always kind of inspired me. And I've built kits and things over the years and done bits and pieces. I had a brief flirtation with CB in the 80s, like a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And which was great. And so I kind of felt I've been building up to this probably for all my life, really. But certainly since I became a ham, I've done a lot of study, and just because I'm interested, and so I mean, that's because
I'm not trying to butter you up here, but I really have to say you not only got a good understanding of it, but are very good at putting it over. And that may be your Methodist ministry, that the fact that you are good at explaining things. But no, but seriously, your knowledge that you have is excellent, I think, and it can really help, and it's infectious because it makes me want to get home tomorrow and just give it a go, get an old you say tobacco tins, I don't suppose there are many of those now, but that sort of thing, a sweet tin or something, and give these sort of things a go. They're really good. Yeah, thank you. We've got Steve has come back, by the way. He was the one who made a transceiver, a 2-meter transceiver. He says yes, it was flea power, and the carrier leak was unbalanced to do CW as well. Carrier leak. Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I can see what he means there.
Yeah.
He said the effect would be minimal on the tuner coil. It was just nitpicking me. Just is interested about that turns ratio on there. Ralph 2M0RHT. I mean, I notice you're in Verwood, so you're on the south coast, aren't you? And he's at the opposite end of the country. He's our Scottish contingent, and says, "What antenna do you use?"
That's a very good question. I use, because I don't have a very big garden, and when I first became a ham, we actually did live on the south coast. We were in Bournemouth, which is about 15 miles south of here, and I had a bigger garden, and so I experimented with a few antennas. Well, it wasn't that big, but since we've moved to Verwood, it's like a postage stamp, so I don't have a lot of room. So I use my trusted end-fed half-wave, and I love this antenna. I've literally worked the world on this antenna. So it's got a 49-to-1 unun, a big thundering thing, which is all protected, and because the voltages are horrific, because of the impedance match. Because the thing with an end-fed is at the end, the impedance is so high, and you're trying to convert that, transform that down to 50 ohms. But it's the good thing is it is actually a resonant antenna. So mine is cut for 40 meters. So you'll get the harmonics of 40, 20, 15, 10. But there's a clever little thing, and actually I think it came from a guy who's not a million miles away from you good people, actually.
It's fun, the world. Funny you should mention that, because it might be the same person. We are very keen on end-fed halfways in this club, and mainly inspired by Steve G0KYA. So I wonder if
yes, I think it's Steve, because he came up with this idea of putting this extra little this 110 microhenry coil and this little dog leg on the end, which fools the antenna into thinking it can do 80 meters. So electrically it's longer because of the induction coil. So now there's no such thing as a free lunch. It means that the bandwidth is much reduced. So because I'm not a CW operator, I've kind of peaked it on the SSB portion of 80 meters. but it does work, and it doesn't stuff up the other bands. So actually, I've got 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. Pretty good. I mean, I've got a tuner, but that's just really just touching it up. But it's a really, really great antenna. And as I say, I've worked all over Japan, Australia, everywhere on this thing. So it's
he'll be well chuffed, because he is, as I say, a great ambassador for. He's one of our top aerial gurus in our club, and he's always. And he advised me to, and that's what I use at home day to day. A really good end-fed half-wave, and it works the world.
Tell him thank you from me, because I've built about 3 of these things now, and it's his stuff that I've used to do it. But
excellent. Oh, thank you for that. There we are, Ralph. You got your answer. That's what antennas to use, and we've made, as you'll know, Ralph, we've made a kit available for several times over the years for Steve's end-fed half-wave. And if you're watching this and you'd like a copy of that, I'm sure he won't mind if I PDF that and send it to you. To build. It's really quite a low cost as well, about £20 or something, isn't it? The most expensive bit is the core, the ferrite, but really good. It's been a delight. Thank you ever so much for tonight. Can I just put one mention as well, not really to do with you, but some people will know and watch the way you build things. You did this sort of Manhattan style construction using blank bits of PCB. I've got quite a lot of PCB that a friend of mine who runs a PCB company that I've bought things from for years and years gave me as offcuts. But I mean, what he calls an offcut is enough to make about 10 receivers for you. So if you're watching this and you're a member of our club, or even if you're not a member, if you like something and you can get along to our Norwich base and give us a look, then ask me in advance, drop me an email the day before, and I'll bring some for you, because that was what he gave it to me for. So you can pay quite a lot of that for that, but he gave it to me on the understanding that I gave it away. So, and this would seem a really good project to sort of use some of that for.
Sometimes I do cheat and get the little kind of me squares, or me pads as they're called, the little kind of metal things, and you snap them off and just super glue them on. I use those a lot.
I couldn't remember what are they called, Nick? Sorry.
Well, they're called me squares. If you one of the questions I get asked most by people is, where do I get these little metal things?
Yeah. Is that the QRP?
So if you put you just Google Manhattan PCB pads or something, and you'll get a few of them come up.
I think the GQRP Club used to sell them, I believe.
They do still sell them, and there's a few other sources as well that sell them. And the other method I do as well is what I call the Dremel technique, but other brands are available, which is where you engrave the little isolated pads. So for things like RF power amplifiers, where you're just trying to keep everything nice and flat and symmetrical and stuff, very often I'll actually get the Dremel out and actually do so. There's everything's on the same physical level and stuff. And
that's nice. Yes, of course, rather than raising them up. Yeah, excellent. By the way, you'll be pleased to know that Steve is watching this. Steve G0KY, and he says no problem. So.
Well, brilliant. Well, thank you, Steve. It's working well.
Someone asked, and Ralph is asking me to send him a copy of the end-fed half-wave air antenna instructions as well. I'm sure lots will be a follow-up as well. This is a contest night, so a lot of the people who normally watch this live, I know, are doing a contest, because we're quite an active contest club too. But I'm sure that they'll be catching this up on this. So actually, Martin has said, Martin G7UGB is over on BATC is watching this and said, is the circuit diagram available on your website, please?
All of those diagrams should be available. Now, I'm just thinking whether I've got a PDF of this. I'll have to have a little look at
if you have, if you don't mind sharing it, I won't publish it so everybody can take it.
Yeah,
I can send it to anybody on request then.
The simple fact is, yes, they are, but they're probably scattered over several videos. Yeah. So I'll have a look, see if I've got the thing, or I can let you have a PDF of my presentation, which I'll have it in.
Well, that's what I was thinking, actually. Yeah. So if you don't mind doing that, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, that's fine. I can let you have that.
Brilliant. Nick, thanks. It's been a joy. I expect questions and discussions will keep carrying on with them, but it's been lovely to have you with us. I hope maybe we can persuade you to come back, because it looks like you're doing some really interesting projects and make it very accessible for people to start making things, because we are really trying to encourage people to do that. Indeed, as you could see from earlier on, we've got the Science Festival put a display there, and a large chunk of that display is showing you the sort of thing you can make, both scratch built and also with little cheap Chinese made kits and things like that, just to get people building stuff. So it's been brilliant. Nick, M0NTV, thank you ever so much again for tonight.
You're very welcome. Thanks ever so much. Thank you.
Thank you. There we are. What an interesting talk. Wonderful. So we, I think, Nick said he's going to send us that PDF. So if you would like a copy of the slides from this, just with the caveat that don't share it publicly to anybody, then let me know. Drop me an email. It would be the best way, really, rather than drop me Facebook messages and things. That would help me. radio@dcpmicro.com. Just say yes, please, or whatever you want, and I'll try and arrange it for you. So that is almost it for NARC Live. It's been lovely to be back with you. Just to remind you what's coming on the club for the next week. On Sunday at 7 o'clock, the GB2RS News. At Monday at 7:30 on GB3MB also is the Monday Night Net. At 8 o'clock, the CW Net on 3.543 megahertz. And then next Wednesday, a week from tonight, we're at CNS School for a social informal and also Bright Sparks for our younger members. As usual, by the way, I haven't mentioned this tonight yet. We do send one of these a week, I'd say, on average. Do let us know if you'd like us to send a card to anybody, whether it's to cheer them up or whether it's a sympathy card or something like that. We have both versions available, and we're always happy to send it. We'll add your name to ours and send them off. Just let us know their name and address if you can. But that's it for this NARC Live. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Don't forget about the competition as well. I wonder if you know what that object is.
I'll put it on Facebook shortly.
Yeah, we will. And I'll put it on the newsletter as well. But until we next meet, from Tammy M0TC.
Bye-bye.
And from me, David G7ERP, take care of yourselves, look after each other. Bye-bye.